yesterday about this time, government, and I have to say this is in some ways quite an activist government, but the government yesterday was announcing the Education Minister, Erica Stanford, and the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, gosh, he's been a busy boy this week, hasn't he? The idea of standardised testing and an assessment regime, if you like, for students, particularly primary students. Yesterday, Erica Stanford held true to a policy that we all voted on. We all had the chance to vote on at the last election, and it was a keystone of the National Party's education policy prior to the election last year. That assessment and regular assessment of children, particularly in our primary school system, would occur, and that parents would be informed. And we discussed this, remember, yesterday, and I had a number of texts from parents who said, do you know, I have had my children through primary school. I never got told what their testing was. I was never aware. And so what Erica Stanford is saying is she wants to standardise that testing because it is carried out in a haphazard fashion throughout the country, and that it be reported the first 6 months of a child's life at school, after 1 year, and then at years 3, 6, and 8. I think I've got that right. Yes, I have. Now, I said yesterday, watch. You watch or listen or wait until you get the pushback from a whole series of people in the so-called education sector who hate testing. And sure enough, ta-da. And of course, it was being led by Radio New Zealand News, who hate the government and are a socialist left pinko news organisation, incredibly paid for by you and me to campaign and lobby against the government. It's extraordinary that we pay the state broadcaster Radio New Zealand News to continually become the de facto opposition to this government. But sure enough, they do. And sure enough, this morning, as God makes little green apples and the sun will eventually shine, Radio New Zealand assigned its critics. They went to the usual suspects, the Auckland University of Technology Associate Professor Ruth Boyask. A good example, I have to say, Ruth Boyask, of the kind of academic that you don't want anywhere near education. They also went to the NZEI, that's the Primary School Teachers Union, who loathe the idea, and they also went to Labour's Deputy Leader, Carmel Sepuloni, and got their reaction and then played that this morning as the considered reaction, apparently, of experts. Now, can I just say, the Auckland University of Technology Associate Professor Ruth Boyask is not an expert. She hasn't got a clue. She's never taught a class in her life. She doesn't know what primary school teaching is, and she in actual fact got her undergraduate degree in fine arts at the University of Canterbury. Yeah, I know. But because of the old Peter principle, you get promoted to the next position because well beyond your capabilities. She's now an associate professor at the worst university in New Zealand, the Auckland University of Technology. Good God. And she's having some influence, one presumes, over the education sector. This is what she says. It's very problematic for young children to be tested, she says. It creates an environment where teachers are more focused on testing than they are on teaching, creating teaching to the test, placing pressure on children, and for very young children may be labelled at a very early age as being unsuccessful. The evidence from overseas is quite conclusive that this kind of testing tends not to measure what it intends to test, which is student learning. Rather, they're being driven by external factors, largely a child's family situation, Boyar said. And she said achieving standardisation of the results would require significant investment. Wouldn't it be better to put that investment towards teachers' understanding of how to teach those children? Can I just say to you, Associate Professor Ruth Boyask, it's not an either or. You would expect teachers to understand how to teach a child. Otherwise, they wouldn't be teachers, and even if they've passed through the education departments of New Zealand universities, manifestly ill-equipped, I have to say, to teach children, teach teachers to teach, you would expect that that would be skill number one that any teacher would have. Two, and I say this to you as well, Associate Professor Ruth Boyask, there are standardised tests out there. They've been there for 30 years. They're called PAT tests, you stupid woman. And they're called EASTL tests. And most teachers, if they were doing their job, would employ them on a regular basis every year, maybe twice a year, to ensure that they were testing if the kids were actually learning what they were being taught. I know. Is it difficult? And all that's happening is, instead of deciding, Ruth Boyask, that a group of teachers are saying, I don't believe in testing. I went to Canterbury University, and they said it was all a neoliberal plot. So I'm not going to teach because I'm a socialist and I don't believe in competition. So we're trying to make sure that those sorts of people who are stupid actually do test, because we want to be able to determine whether or not, A, their teaching's effective, but more importantly, B, whether the kids that are being taught by them are actually learning anything. And if they aren't, to be able to identify that they might need special assistance or a new teacher, which is the reason why the NZEI hate testing, because it will determine pretty quickly the teachers that can teach and the teachers that can't. And then, horror of horrors, they will also tell parents. And we don't want parents to know, do we? We don't want you to know about your child. We want your child to enter the dark void, the abyss that is the New Zealand compulsory education system. And we don't want you to know that your child can't read, can't write, isn't numerate, has no ability to problem solve until they come to NCA level 1, age about 15 or 16, and then, oh my God, the parents can say, my child's not doing so well. They're not achieving. They're not getting their assessments. They've got a lot of not achieves on their little, and this is a bloody easy life. I mean, God, 80% of New Zealand pass this. Why isn't my child passing this? Why don't I know? Because for 10 years, dear, the Primary School Union and people like Ruth Boyask and the Labour Party have been trying to hide that information from you, because it might just ask some unpalatable questions and might just equip you with the information that you need to know to ask the teacher, why isn't my child learning so well? Can't possibly tell parents that, can we? Told you. And there's Radio New Zealand amplifying these views as if they are accurate, truthful, and essentially denying democracy. And the most important factor in this, the parent and the child having some real stake in an education system that is designed for academics at the Auckland University of Technology, apparently, and teachers who don't want to be held accountable if they're not doing their job.